What's up, everybody? Noah Hiles, Andrew Destin here from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. And we have three big takeaways from the first day of spring training. Pitchers and catchers reported today in beautiful sunshine, Bradenton, Florida. And Andrew, pretty eventful day when you really think about it. A lot went on.
Yeah, a ton to really recap here. We got Spencer Horwitz to talk about. We've got Bryan Hayes. We got the dynamic we've got in the outfield with Tommy Pham versus Bryan Reynolds, what they're going to do there. There's a ton to get into here that I'm sure that we'll get into in full detail.
We'll get after it right now. We'll start with the big news that broke last night. Spencer Horwitz on the shelf had wrist surgery, chronic issues as defined by the team. They were aware that he had some wrist issues prior to the trade, still went through, made the move. He comes to Pittsburgh, they said, a little after Pirate Fest, which would have been, mid-January?
Yep.
So would have been just a couple weeks ago. He sustained an injury to his right wrist, a tendon above his thumb that required surgery. He's expected to be away from baseball for 6 to 8 weeks. The hope is that they can get him working out sometime during I would assume, the back end of spring training based off of that timeline.
Right.
But the Pirates are going to be without a player who they acquired, assuming that he would be their everyday first baseman. Andrew, I guess my first question for you, what do you make of the news that they kind of knew that he had wrist issues when they brought him in?
Yeah, I think it's slightly problematic, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's, you have to cover the bases and think, hey, if this was part of the component with the trade, does that affect exactly what they gave up in Hartle, in Kennedy, and, of course, Luis Ortiz to get him? That was a hefty price to pay to get him in the first place. So I think that's something that certainly comes to mind for me. The second component to it is, what exactly does the long-term future look like for Spencer Horwitz? This is a guy who's already in his late 20s as a prospect, doesn't have a ton of big league experience. In terms of production moving forward, I'd have to say it's a little bit of an unknown in terms of how he'll bounce back. Wrist injuries on the surface in terms of long-term health, not the most serious. But for baseball, throwing, hitting, this is going to impact him in a fairly significant way.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Forget long-term. I'm not thinking about next year or the year after that, even though that is a big part of this story because they acquired him for his years of control.
Right.
But let's think about this year. Like you said, Andrew, wrists in baseball they're one of the most important things in your body to play this sport, especially the position that he plays. And you might get healthy enough to where you can return to action, but this is probably going to be something, especially because they use the word chronic. That means it's not going to go away instantly. So that's a big concern. And it's troubling to hear that if you're a Pirate fan, considering that this was the big move that they made. They signed guys on one-year deals, but this was the big trade that they dealt away their third most valuable starting pitcher from a year ago, along with 2 top 30 prospects for. And this is the start to his Pirates tenure. It's not good.
No, and it complicates things, and I think it's a key point for us to get into next. It complicates things in terms of who is the first baseman in the interim.
Right.
It seems like it's not going to be Bryan Reynolds. That much was made clear to us by General Manager Ben Cherington earlier today. But who is going to do it in the interim? Is it going to be somebody who's a non-roster invite? Does Derek all of a sudden become a really important player? Is it a DJ Stewart who has very limited first base experience but has a lot more big league experience than Derek Hall does? Or do they go outside the organization? Because 6 to 8 weeks, this could very much linger for a lot longer than that.
And who's to say he's game ready?
Right.
I mean, he's going to be missing a lot of spring. There's some ramp up required for a guy in this situation. So that's where you have to consider maybe bringing in someone externally. Or do you rely on, like you said, Derek Hall, maybe a Billy Cook, maybe we see Endy Rodriguez get some opportunities there, Jared Triolo. It's a big problem I'm sure the Pirates wish they didn't have to deal with one day into their season. We'll move on now, Andrew. Something that hopefully won't be a Pirates problem, as at least in their eyes, is third base. Bryan Hayes talked to us, and I got to say, it's the most I've seen him smile in quite some time. He looks slimmer, in my opinion. And he talked about the work that he put in the offseason. He said going on the IL to end the year gave him a 5-week head start to rehabbing. But from all indications, at least what he says, things are looking good for Bryan Hayes.
Right, and we've seen this before, right, in spring training where Bryan Hayes comes in, he's healthy, he's hitting home runs, he's playing good defense. But I don't know, I don't mean to speak for but it felt different today. It did, and I think the important point here is that there's a program in place that he feels confident in. This is something that he admitted as much, has said so before on record. This is going to be a problem of his for the rest of his baseball career, and probably for the rest of his life, that he's going to be dealing with these lingering lower back issues. But if he's able to keep them in check, if he can be a more regular player, it would be a huge pickup for the Pirates. It'd be more impactful than anybody they got over the offseason, which kind of goes without saying, given how good he was in 2023, specifically in the second half. So I'd like to see it to believe it, but encouraging stuff.
A big takeaway I had from Hayes' talk with us, and which you could view on this YouTube channel, just look at the video probably beneath this one. You asked this, because a lot of the talk for most of his availability with us was about his rehabbing, being able to lift weights like he used to, and strengthening his core. And you kind of asked, okay, well, what did you work on baseball-wise?
Right.
And the idea that he's able to not only get more healthy, strengthen that core, but also work on his game, I think that's encouraging, because you don't want to just spend the whole offseason working on your body, because you also have to work on your swing. Mm-hmm. You also have to focus on the craft of baseball.
Right, and you have to be able to put it into practice, right? Because the last thing you want is, and we've seen this before with Hayes, where he spent all this time over the offseason getting better shape, but then the baseball activity itself, that's really what causes the issues for him. Right. It's the being on a long plane flight. It's crouching down at third base every single pitch. That's the stuff that can really affect Hayes in a negative way. So the fact that he was able to change up his swing a little bit, he's finishing with a two-hand follow-through now, something he hasn't done since early on in high school. Why? Because his core had limited him, because his back had limited him. He would cut off the swing early, as well as improve with swing decisions. So I look at it as this is a great development. He is in better shape, certainly. Baseball-wise, he's getting better. This is a huge pickup for the Pirates if it can work out this way.
Final thing of note we're going to discuss today involves the outfield. Tommy Pham brought in last week, right? Is when they signed him. Yep. 1-year deal, just over $4 million a year. I think the assumption from those outside the organization was this is going to be a guy that comes in and plays right field. Makes sense, right? Because they have an all-star left fielder. They have a guy they handpicked to play center field. Not so much. Derek Shelton talked to us today, said the plan is for Reynolds to actually be the right fielder, and Tommy Pham, he said, going to get a lot of at-bats and going to be playing left field. Andrew, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I support the move. I think it's the right one. I think and it's less to say about Tommy Pham as it is more so Bryan Reynolds. Right. That's my read on it is, this is no disservice to Bryan Reynolds, certainly a fine player, but it's clear defensively at this stage in his career, he's not who he was when he first came up with the Pirates. This is a guy who was a center fielder, then they moved him to left, now moving him to right. It's the shortest area at PNC Park, the ability to play off the wall. And hey, when you got a guy who's got a strong arm, where do you usually play him? Right field.
Right.
Bryan Reynolds, that's probably his best attribute defensively at this stage. It's not his range, it's not his ability to go back on balls, it's not his speed, nothing like that. It's can he throw guys out on the base paths. He did a solid job of that last year, so I personally support the move.
I agree. I guess my only counterpoint would be if we knew that they wanted to move Reynolds to right, I look at the left field free agent market, and it kind of makes it sting a little bit more considering the other options they could have had out and left. But I like this plan. I also think it's a good plan for other outfielders in the organization who, I think would probably be better defensive players in left field at this point than Reynolds as well. Before we wrap up, got one bonus thing. We did 3 takeaways. We'll do one more. Daniel Vogelbach.
Yeah,
he's back. Comes back as, what was his official title? Something
special assistant hitting coordinator.
Yeah, working with hitting, similar in a role to, I would say, Jeremy Bleish.
Yeah,
the way they used him. I like this move, just in the sense where, it's good to surround your new hitting coach with guys that he's familiar with, guys he trusts. Haig coached Vogelbach last year in Toronto, and Vogelbach, obviously, familiarity with this organization, being that he played here not long ago. And also, it's good to have a modern perspective. A guy who said, look, I was facing a lot of the pitchers that you will be facing this year, because I was in this league last year. I don't know how big of an impact he's going to have, but I don't hate the move.
Yeah, it's unclear yet whether it's going to be primarily major league level, rover on the minor leagues, whatever it looks like. It's good to have people who are on the same page. Him and Haig, that consistency, that camaraderie. You hit on it, Noah. I think it's a good pickup. Vogelbach, this has nothing to do with him as a player anymore.
No.
You have to remember to separate that.
Yeah.
This is not going to be the solution at first base, though he did field a few ground balls over there today.
He did.
But regardless, I think it's a good pickup for the Pirates to add him to the coaching staff, add him to the brain trust.
I agree. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. That's what we got from day one. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't already at PG Pirates. He's Andrew Destin. I'm Noah Hiles. We'll have more from day 2 in Bradenton for Pirate Spring Training 2025.
Thank you for checking out this content from Post-Gazette Sports. If you watch this video on YouTube, please like the video and subscribe to our channel. For all of the sports coverage the Post-Gazette has to offer, visit post-gazette.com.